for Friday, November 8th. Some 55 hours plus after the Associated Press named Donald Trump officially the winner of the White House. With me, as always, are my two colleagues, Ray Rowe, the editor-in-chief of Creative Loafing, and independent reporter and author Ben Montgomery. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. It's only been 55 hours, not 55 days.
No.
Who's counting?
It's just anyway, good to see you both here.
Good to see you, Mitch.
Yeah, Ben, good to see you. You know, some of the listeners may have heard that Ray and I were on Shelley's Reback show on Wednesday, and that was a good time as guests. We're happy to have Ben with us, of course. And guys, we're going to get into it today, and I want to encourage our listeners. You know, obviously, this is a big time here to deal with the ramifications of the election, both nationally and here in Florida. And we want to, open up the phones in a few minutes here. 813-239-9663. You can also email us at dj@wmnf.org. We really want to hear from you today, give you the opportunity to speak. And we also have a couple guests here that we're going to dissect again and where we go forward here in this election. Basically, of course, I was on Tuesday night, I was at the Yes on 4 event, Amendment 4, of course. That was the abortion rights measure in St. Petersburg, which we all know got 57% support. So the public in Florida supported that. They did support repealing the 6-week abortion ban, but with our laws that we have here, by the way, voted on by the Floridians, not by the legislature in 2006. That's why we have to have 60% threshold. That wasn't good enough. Pro-choice measures also failed in South Dakota and Nebraska, where they enshrined a 12-week ban. But voters did approve initiatives in Colorado, Maryland, New York, also Montana, Missouri, Arizona, and Nevada. I was reading, I think it's in Colorado, that actually did get 60%. So there was one state in the country this week that actually did get to that 60% threshold. They did not have to get that high, but they did. Those are all states where Trump won or is leading. Pro-choice measures failed, like I said, here in South Dakota, Nebraska. Okay, so what does this mean for us going forward? Well, joining us in the studio to talk about this is Bree Wallace. She's the director of case management for the Tampa Bay Abortion Fund. That is a nonprofit organization that helps remove financial and logistical barriers to abortion care, including financial assistance for local procedures or for travel assistance for those needing to leave the state due to the restrictive 6-week ban. Good morning, Bree.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
It's nice to have you here. I read the Tampa Bay Times story yesterday. Chris O'Donnell had a piece about, and by the way, in our Florida Phoenix Day, we were in the lead piece that we have this morning. Tampa Bay Abortion Fund has awarded more than $700,000 to about 150 women to pay for clinic appointments, travel, and accommodation costs in places like Maryland and Washington, D.C. since the 6-week abortion ban went into effect. Let's get into that, but let me talk about you first, Bree. Where were you at watching the returns on Tuesday night when you heard about Amendment 4 going down?
I was actually on the Yes on 4 party too in St.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Okay.
I kind of left when I knew it was going wrong, so I went to a Chili's with my friends to go cry and drink there, and then I stayed up till 4:30 to watch the presidential election, and then I just cried some more. So it was rough.
How you doing now?
I'm just working. I think this is the time to kind of throw yourself into organizing, collaborating, doing as much, as you can for your community and the people around you. So I'm trying to utilize the momentum we have right now and all the rage that people are feeling.
So talk to us. I think, describe what you guys do there, helping out women who need help, need to go because they, how's that been going? I mean, we had you on several months ago.
Yeah, that was like, we were 6 weeks into the 6-week ban. That was 44 days. Does that feel like a lifetime ago?
Yes, I feel like it's been years. And sadly, we're going to have years more of this. We're not getting rid of 6-week bans for at least 2 to 4 years if we're lucky. So I think it's just going to be continuing to do that. And, my work has changed a lot. It's working with getting people out of state, them having to travel thousands of miles, having to pay for flights and hotels and rideshare and childcare and, procedure costs. And, costs only go up. And some of these are urgent cases. You're buying flights for the next day. So it's just us spending a lot of money for this, which, we will gladly do as long as we can. And we're always going to be here to, help our community with what they need, especially when it comes to, a human right. Abortion is healthcare, and we're just going to keep working and helping everyone we possibly can and working through these barriers.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you've been there. How long have you been at the Tampa Bay Abortion Fund?
2020.
Okay, so you've been there when there was this normal 24 weeks basically, then it went to 15 weeks in 2022, and now just again since May we've had the 6-week ban. Has obviously the work changed for you when we got these bans themselves because people were coming to Florida, right, back a few years ago to get out of other places. Then, of course, everything changed. The 15-week law that we put into effect, that actually happened before Dobbs went down. The Dobbs decision happened in May of 2022, or was it, I think, right, or July 22, anyway, right before the summertime. So it's been different, right? It must be different in those 4 years you've been there with the different laws taking place. Again, now since May 1st, we've had the 6-week ban. How are you guys doing financially? And obviously you rely a lot on people helping you out, just writing checks for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we get donations, and that's how we pretty much pay for most things. We try to apply for grants, but, grants for abortions are very scarce, and there's so many, abortion funds throughout the U.S. that also need these. So, we're all kind of like applying for the same thing. So we really do rely on, donations from people. We get like family foundations that send them in, people from their retirement accounts, monthly donors. So it's really that. We're doing our end of year fundraiser right now, and I think we've gotten like over 20,000 since the election, which is great. But that's the thing about elections and Dobbs, and when big things happen is, you get a lot of donations then, and then they fall completely off. So it's really just keeping the momentum, and there's not going to be another big event for a few years. We have to keep people engaged in this and have them channel into something and, just keep donating, become like a monthly donor, and just... I saw so many campaigns raise so much money this election. I mean, Yes on 4 got over 100 million. So there's money out there. We're not, it's not a thing. Right. So we need pretty much these rich people to now actually give to abortion, because that's all that's left for us to do right now is help people pay for their abortions.
Yeah, none of those states that Mitch mentioned at the top of the show that did pass measures are close to Florida, right? But it's important to know that abortion is still legal in Florida. And
yes.
That number 20,000 popped out because last time you were here, you mentioned that an abortion can cost anywhere between $500 to $20,000, depending on how far somebody has to travel. You alluded to these RAGE donations, and I think since the 6-week ban went into effect, a press release from you guys said you've pledged $400 to $1,000 to cover these costs. That's 739 people. But there has to be a cap on how many people you guys can actually serve, right? Do we know that number?
Honestly, we are spending the money that we have. We don't close unless, I'm out of office and I'm our one staff and I literally can't do anything. That's like really the only time we've been closing. We know that there's an urgent need right now, and we try to just keep fundraising and helping. So, we have like cut down to only working with specific clinics in Tampa and only helping Hillsborough and Pinellas people travel. But, there's other abortion funds in Florida that help out with that as well. But we haven't ever turned anyone away. If they're not in our area, we'll connect you with another fund. And you touched up on abortion is still legal here. And I think there's a lot of fear mongering going on right now that, we have a near total abortion ban, which isn't wrong, but we don't have a total abortion ban. We have 6 weeks. There are still, I think, Guttmacher put that there was still over 5,000 abortions happening in June and July here. So they're still happening. Less numbers, of course, but we want people to know that you can go to a clinic here. You don't have to go out of state per se. It's good to kind of keep track of your periods right now and, be diligent in that. But, it's still happening here. And we especially want to keep our local clinics open and, have that resource for people.
Are you concerned about what's going to happen under this new administration? The Democrats, Donald Trump has been said that he does not support a national abortion ban. In fact, there was a thought that he might come out against Amendment 4 at one point. He floated that out there, and he got so much abuse, and then he's like, oh, no, never mind. He did support Amendment 3, the cannabis measure here in Florida. But by the way, we were both at that event. Lauren Brunzell, who was the campaign director for Yes on 4, this is what she said at the watch party in St. Pete after the vote came in. She said, quote, "A minority have decided that Amendment 4 will not be adopted. The reality is a majority of Floridians, in which is the most what is the most important presidential election in Florida history, just voted to end Florida's abortion ban. Republicans, Democrats, and independents do not support these extreme bans on abortion. They are tired of women dying because of abortion bans. They are tired of women being forced to giving birth to children who die in their arms because of abortion bans. They are tired of doctors being threatened with prison sentences because of abortion bans. She also called for the legislature, saying that this is a direct mandate against the 6-week law, that the legislature should go back to Tallahassee next spring and change the law. And, of course, nobody thinks that's going to happen, right?
No, I mean,
I agreed.
you kind of touched upon what organizing now and things like that, and you guys have talked about your monthly donor option. There's been a lot of fundraisers. I think there's a concert in December happening, and a lot of promoters have done that. But in your 4 years at TBAF, 2 of them were as volunteers. Can you talk a little bit about the role that volunteers play at your organization, and if there's anybody out there listening who's wondering, how can I get involved? What does being a volunteer at your organization look like?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have the capacity to take people on right now. There's so much training that goes into this because you need to know exactly what to say and what not to say. But, you know, our volunteers are vital, and really it's just our community. I mean, the benefit show that's happening is just people in the community doing things for us. They don't, you know, come to us and say, like, can you help us with this? They put it on and they say, if you want to come, come. And I think that's the biggest thing that helps us is just like artists, you know, tattoo artists, photographers, people do like raffles and fundraisers, and that helps, you know, more than you would ever know. And it takes a lot off of us because, again, being the only staff, volunteer management's a full-time job. It really is. And we love and appreciate everyone, but it's so hard to manage volunteers. But I do really encourage people to become part of their community and go to these events and maybe join orgs that are taking people and that do stuff for abortion. And, you know, just really like connecting, because these politicians are never coming to save us. We are the only people that are going to keep us safe. So knowing your community and knowing your people around you really make, you know, all the difference. But when I did start out, I was doing intake when it was a lot easier, and now it's literally a full-time job. We had to make it a job, but we have people that, you know, table for us, like send out thank you notes, just talk to people about us, find us grants, things like that. There's definitely things to do.
What is the next? I mean, there must be something, some activity, some protest, something on the horizon, right?
Yeah.
Is there relief out there? And what are you looking forward to in terms of activity?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of events happening right now. There's a lot of benefit shows. I'm trying to do like a little like craft and chat event for like our community where, you know, we're all really sad and mad right now, and I know we are, and I want us to just have like a room together to kind of feel that energy, but also, you know, do some fun things and talk. So I'm trying to get that set up, and, you know, the number one thing is follow our social medias to know when these events are happening and what we're doing.
What's the social media? How can people follow you?
Yeah, so on Instagram, it's TBA Fund. On Facebook, it's Tampa Bay Abortion Fund. Same as our website is tbafund.com, and it has all that on there.
And we should tell people, again, we're speaking with Bree Wallace from the Tampa Bay Abortion Fund about where we're at here in this state, in this country. By the way, the Associated Press, Newark Center for Public Affairs researched, had a poll. It said at least 70% of Americans oppose a federal ban on abortion or a ban on the procedure at 6 weeks. Again, Donald Trump, if he does decide to curb access, experts say that could include limiting the use of medication abortion, particularly what is administered through telehealth or delivered by the mail. Last year, according to Guttmacher, 63% of all abortions in the U.S. were done through the pill, basically. Mm-hmm. So if you want to stop that would stop a lot of abortions in this country. So that's, I think, one of the biggest concerns. I would think that going into this Trump administration, you don't have to do a national abortion ban. You can just stop that pill from being distributed across state lines and get the same effect.
Yeah.
Can I ask you to riff off of Mitch's question from earlier after the vote came in? Has your fund or any of the other state funds heard from the Yes on 4 infrastructure and leadership there to say whether or not they would be organizing to help raise money for these funds?
Kinda, yeah. I talked with Lauren a little bit, and I think she's going to try to work with us on some things because, you know, like I said, they got over $100 million. Right. They know a lot of connections now. And I think, you know, we can work together through all of this because they're going to be organizing the next few years, I'm sure, but there's really nothing we can do but fund abortions right now. So I do think hopefully we can work together on that, and
yeah.
they had some great people on that.
Well,
campaign.
I'm wondering, again, that is such a big effort, but, the idea of coming back in 2026 for the constitutional amendment, I know it's raw right now, and nobody's going to be talking about that for the moment, but, I think this, by the way, might also be possible with Amendment 3. We saw this with medical marijuana a decade ago when it lost in 2014, getting 57% of the vote. It came back in 2016, I think, got over 70% of the vote. If the money is there, which it is in the marijuana and the cannabis situation, with Truly spending $100 million more of their own, that money is out there nationally for people who don't want to see this happen in Florida, an important state. Whatever we think about where it's at right now in terms of being a ruby red state. It's not a red state, no, it's a ruby red state. But indeed, yeah. So, right. So Bree, you're going to keep on carrying on, obviously. What else can we do at this point? Anything else?
No, I mean, I think we're going to talk about this with Barry a little bit, but you alluded to this, Bree, and we're so fresh off of this. Do you think Democrats or alleged left-leaning leaders of parties have learned anything from this election?
No, I don't. And I think I'm a registered Democrat, and there are Democrats out there that I like. But like I said, these politicians are never coming to save us, and they have their own agendas. And we were supposed to codify Roe v. Wade a million times, but Democrats run off of it so much that why would they do that?
Right.
We've put ourselves into this situation when we could have got out of it so long ago, and now we just lost the whole government. We're all red now. That we're not going back for a long time. So,
Bree, you considered running for state office actually earlier this year. What district was that going to be? Right.
District 66. Tracy Coster is the state rep there.
Okay, and that she of course won re-election on Tuesday. But would you still consider doing something like that, or no?
I think when I'm maybe a little bit older.
Yeah, you're
honestly.
young. You're like 27?
Yeah, I'm 27, so maybe in my 30s or 40s. I think right now my best work is grassroots and mutual aid and just trying to be a part of the community, because you don't want someone in the government that doesn't care about you. You want someone that has shown that they will work for you and they have your best interest and they come from the same lifestyle as you. We don't want these rich politicians that don't care, that come out of nowhere to keep running.
Right. Okay, I think we're going to transition. Bree, stick around if you want to here. We're going to bring Barry Edwards in. Barry Edwards, a longtime political consultant for working for both Democrats and Republicans in Tampa Bay for 40 years, I guess it has been now at this point.
Yes. Whom you might have heard in the last segment.
Yes, we did
Barry,
not know.
Barry, do you live at WMNF now?
I get my news from two sources, WMNF and La Gazzetta.
Oh, no. So
and Creative Loafing.
And by the way, we really do want to open the phones up, 813-239-9663. Let's talk about your thoughts right now about, we're going to get into Florida right now, Florida politics, obviously. It was a brutal night for Democrats on Tuesday, but you know what? We say that after every election, quite frankly. I can't remember the last time I didn't say that. Certainly not in 22, certainly not in 2020, certainly not in 2018. The difference in 2018, frankly, and before that, 2014, 2010, when Rick Scott was winning these one-point victories, is when Democrats had hundreds of thousands of more voters registered than Republicans in this state.
Or millions more.
Okay, and we're a long way away from that now. Let's talk, Barry, about the state party. They had a goal, okay? Again, when you're so down so low, you want to start modestly. So in the Florida legislature, there's a, quote, supermajority in both the Senate, House, and Senate. And Democrats wanted to get, at least 5 seats, I think.
They needed to get 6 seats.
So 6 to overcome the supermajority.
And they actually lost a seat.
They lost a seat.
So the supermajority increased in the House.
So it's right now, I believe, 80, is it 86?
85-35.
Okay, 85 Republicans, 35 Democrats. It remains in the Senate, 28 Republicans, 12 Democrats. So this is what, let's see, do I have this thing from Evan Power, the Republican Party of Florida chairman? He wrote, he said, quote, a little more than 4 weeks ago, Florida Democrats bit off way more than they could chew. They launched their ambitious Take Back Florida Distinction program, where they claimed they'd win 21 competitive races against Florida Republicans, but they did not. Florida Republican candidates not only had better grassroots organization, but policy that left Florida Democrats biting the dust. Florida Republicans won 20 of the 21 competitive races Democrats highlighted. And he's like, it's just very tough here for the Democrats. Do you
and Rick Scott's framed it like this on election night: Florida is the center of the Republican Party.
It is, and I think I was on this show or Florida This Week. I said 2 weeks ago that Trump was going to win by 13 and Scott was going to win by 12. And I told you that a year ago, and everybody, including you, made fun of me. I was wrong. Trump won by 13 and Scott won by 13. So I underestimated
Well, let's talk
the
about the
victory.
pollsters, right? Rick Scott was, Debbie Merkel-Powell was running against Rick Scott, and the polls are roughly, I think the average, Real Clear Politics average is about 4 to 5 points. The polls had her down or as close as 3 points.
And that's because public polls, unfortunately, are not very good now.
Right.
FAU, UNF, they're doing what they call panel polls, and that'd be a whole show. But this is how you do polling. You do polling by live calls, which is the most accurate. The second most accurate is if you do an IVR poll, which means an automated, you push numbers in, and then you go to text polls, and then you go to email online polls. And then the least accurate is panels. Some of these panel polls, we know they're going to be 20 points off.
What do you mean by panel polls?
So I get Ray Rao and you to sign up to be on a panel, and every time we have a poll, once a month, I send you the poll.
Okay.
Well, unfortunately, for accuracy, liberals are more likely to sign up and do these polls than conservatives. And Republicans really believe that they are being tracked by legacy media, and they're going to be outed, and they're going to be canceled. And so it's very difficult to get these polls. But that's why David Halpern wrote, when he saw internal polling for Kamala Harris, the internal polling for Kamala showed you what happened on election night. And I saw things like that with the Trump campaign. The internal polls showed you what happened election night. So we know that. And people like Matt Towery, who lives in St. Petersburg,
Right.
and Robert Cahaley, their polls were highly accurate because they found ways to find Republicans. But there's there's two types of Republicans. I like Matt Florell used to do great jobs when people would
Taking
answer.
polls, yeah.
But now he can't, because a Republican who will answer his poll is a 50-year-old who lives at home with his parents, not a 50-year-old Republican like me.
Yeah, let me ask you, through your experience through all these years and in this last election, what role did right-wing publications from Fox News down to Florida outlets and these really hyper-local outlets that we have here, what role did they play in this election as far as swinging folks who were on the fence about whether they would hold their nose and vote for Trump? You know, these kinds of people who don't respond to the polls.
Humongous. In fact, we saw in the polling the number one reason why people who voted for Biden that could vote for Trump, the persuadables, were where they were from. If they were born in the Middle East, they were likely to go to Trump. The second most likely people that voted for Biden that could vote for Trump were people that listened to Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan has 15 million daily listeners, and that's twice what the NBC Evening News audience is. And so when Kamala Harris didn't go on there and he endorsed, those were persuadable voters. I listen to all three newscasts. I tape them every night, watch them. I'm not a persuadable voter. I know what I'm going to do 2 years out.
How many of the persuadable voters are they actually out there?
Okay, so we found that people vote I think the last segment, by their tribe. And I worked the poll in St. Petersburg at the supervised elections next to the city hall.
Yeah.
And we had the Democrats on one side, the Republicans trying to hand out palm cards. And I was in the middle just counting. And out of 200 people, only 4 took palm cards. The other one said, oh, isn't their party on the ballot already? They were going to vote straight party
And by the way,
tickets.
some states, they do have that, right? They
You
do
can just go click.
Yeah, they do, believe it or not, have it. By the way, if you're just tuning in right now, it's 11:29. You're listening to The Skinny here in WMNF. Mitch Perry, Ben Montgomery, Ray Roa. We're with Barry Edwards. They're talking about the election here.
And I want to finish up one little
Yeah.
thing with Ray. So now the media is fractured. Used to go, the St. Pete Times, when Senator Rasan got elected to the state Senate, when they endorsed him, he surged 20 points. Their endorsement was worth 20 something.
How long ago was that
2016.
That recent is 8 years ago. The
Right.
Tampa Bay Times recommendation, not endorsement, recommendation, carried that much weight.
Carried that much weight. It was worth $250,000, $500,000.
Earned media, right?
Right. And now, but also people took it to the polls.
Right.
Now, and I was wrong. I'm going to admit one of the rare times Barry Edwards was wrong.
Oh, okay. Hold on, guys. The radio's going to break here.
I did not realize how much Republicans hate legacy media. There were people that brought the Times endorsement. I thought they were going to vote for it. I said, no, we're voting against their recommendations for the amendments. And they said, isn't that a trash newspaper? And I said, no. And I mean, so Republicans hate legacy media and do not trust it, where the Democrats and independents
Do trust it, right?
Do trust it.
And but anyway, so we'll move away from polls. But I do think, again, with this, I was saying this before the show began with Ben, is they basically, the polls were again underestimated Republicans, right, nationally.
There's anybody who was voting for Kamala Harris in my neighborhood had a Kamala Harris sign. There were people I know in my neighborhood that were going to vote for Trump, but they didn't want to do it.
Really?
Because they didn't want.
The hidden where the shy Trump voter. They
Right,
called
the bashful Trump voter.
Yeah.
And
That
so-
still exists, I
That still
guess.
exists.
More
They
than
do-
ever, I guess.
They don't want to be vilified. Well, now I think you're going to see very few of them, because now they dominate. They won and they're the dominant force in America.
So let's talk about here in Florida. Actually, let's talk about Hillsborough County. It's my take that it was not as bad as it could have been in Hillsborough.
Well, I think it was pretty bad, so I'm going to disagree with you there.
Okay,
it was a fiasco, and it was caused by the Hillsborough Democratic Party and the chairman.
Ione Townsend?
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay, why we're seeing a lot of criticism of Ione Townsend on social media in the last few days.
It's validated. She did. They had a PAC set up for their Hillsborough Society. They spent about $40,000 on voter registration. They got 30 to 60 registrants, so that's a waste of money. But then they did this massive $119,000 or $109,000 digital voter registration. Well, in the period that they did it, the Democrats went from 12,000 up to 5,034 up. Okay, so they were registering 3-1 Republicans.
Really?
Because they don't know when you click on the link when it goes to who they're going to register. So if you look at that, that's the margins that Cindy Stewart and Sean Shaw lost by, because you take the number that they registered, the gain, you take that they voted at 80% and 95% of them voted straight ticket. Sean Shaw would be a county commissioner today, and so would Cindy Stewart if they hadn't done those. If Ione hadn't wasted that money.
Wow. Okay. And there's a lot of pushback on other parts with Ione, but we'll see how it plays out there.
Well, Ione's been there since in leadership since 2012, right? And the Democrats have
how much they soared. They did great.
Right. There's been ups and downs.
They were one of the best successful blue counties in the state.
When she got in, there was a demographic trend, and she took credit for the voter registration gaps. And I told her myself that this should have nothing to do with that. But now she doesn't have anything to do with the voter registration decline. You can't take credit and not take the blame.
Okay, let's go.
But demographically, Hillsborough has changed.
Yeah, absolutely, it's changed. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Simon calling in from Lakeland. Hi, Simon. You're on the Skinny.
Hi. I wanted to call back. I wanted to ask Barry a question.
Okay.
He mentioned that people vote by tribe, and I would agree with him wholeheartedly. I wanted to present to him the Pew Research of the projected 2050 population in the United States. The white population is going to decrease from 67% to 47%. The Hispanic population will double from 14% to 29%. The black population will remain the same from 13% to 13%, and the Asian population will remain the same from 9% to 9%. That being said, that the Hispanic population is going to double and that the white population is going to drop by 20%. Looking at the black community, why would they, with due respect, why would they vote Democrat if the immigration issue affects them personally in the ability of jobs? And second of all, why would they vote for the Democratic Party knowing that they could increase their populist growth by not having abortions?
Well, I don't think people get strategically into voting like that. So I think that's the second part. But let's look at this. In Florida, my client and friend Darrell Rasan is the chairman of the Florida Legislative Black Caucus, the most important black caucus in the state. 60% of the returning Florida legislators that are Democrats are African American. 60%. That's the real issue, is that the Democratic Party now electorally in Florida does not look like Florida. When 60% of your legislators are African American, you do not represent. In the Florida Senate, there's 12 senators, 7 are black. One's a gay black man, Chev Jones.
Right.
So you got that. But then you have 5 other senators. 2 are Jewish women. One is a white straight woman. One is a straight white guy. And then you have a Hispanic gay man. That does not look like Florida. And one of the big reasons is when Ron DeSantis won the first time is Bill Galvano raised $40 million in the Senate races, and they just poured out this effort. And I'm going to real quick.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons why the Democratic Party lost this time too is they recruited candidates for every race. And
right.
you say philosophically that's the
they
right thing to do.
They boasted about that. Now some of these candidates live hundreds of miles away. We learned.
Well, not only that, but here and Danny Alvarez's opponent. Mm-hmm. Raised $4,000. He was going to shut off his campaign at $50,000. He told me at the Jan Platt Library he's going to spend $600,000. That was $600,000 that was spent turning out Republican voters. Ben Braver ran against Danny Burgess. He raised $10,000. Danny Burgess rolled over $1 million and spent $500,000 turning out Republicans in Hillsborough County alone. That was a strategic error, a tactical error, and Nikki Fried should resign because
Well, you're
of
getting
it.
to the point, though, about one of the problems here is that the money disparity is
Thanks
ridiculous.
for the call, Simon.
Is outrageous in terms of the money
thank you,
here,
Simon.
And that is like, so, Bear, do you have any numbers about, like, say, what the Florida Senate House brought in versus the Republican House?
Yes. So the last quarter, Fentrice Driscoll raised about $4 million.
For the Democrats, for the House Democrats. Okay.
But before that, she'd been outraised probably by $8 million for total spending. But in the Florida Senate, it was a better example so Pizzo raised probably $7 or $8 million for the whole
For
cycle.
the Democrats, Senate Democrats.
The Republicans raised about
40 million versus how much?
7.
Yeah.
So that's the disparity.
Right. And you're okay, so 40 million versus 7 million in the Senate, and this is a state that already has 7% more Republicans in terms of like the voter registration breakdown to over 1,100,000 now at this point.
And they vote 3.5% higher.
They vote, right. That's what we saw on Tuesday, right? We saw even with the disparity naturally that we have in the state in terms of more Republicans and Democrats, and at least if Democrats participate, they can make it more maybe a game. But Democrats, it was different than 2 years ago where it was 15% less voting, 14.5, I believe it was, which is why Charlie Crist got blown out by 19 points.
Well, these weren't close races. Scott and Trump statewide,
right.
13 points. And that's what I said on this show, I think even the last time you had me on. This is the new normal. A Democrat cannot win Florida statewide. It doesn't matter how much resources you have. The marijuana amendment had $114 million. No, they got to 55%. But it doesn't matter. The state is just too locked in for Republicans. The Republican statewide nominee will not win by less than 10
let me
points.
ask you this.
And Rick Scott is your example of that, winning by 13.
Right. Shocking. After Rick Scott had ran 3 races.
I think we have a bet on that, by the way.
1%. And what,
I don't know if it's shocking, though, with the number of Republicans who moved here after COVID and continue to move
Well, that's
here.
right. When you add 1 million Republicans, that's how I predicted the county commission losses.
Mm-hmm.
You take the new registrants, you take what percentage they're going to turn out, they're going to vote 95% straight ticket, you add that to the totals that are Sparibus, and you got your margins. And that's
also
what
I
it
want
was.
to ask you about, because I think Democrats really were hoping for the NPAs, the independent
Oh,
voters.
I've got
Okay, no, hold on. So that was the savior. We saw that in Congressional District 13, right, where Whitney Fox, who we had on the show just a couple
I
weeks
think
ago.
we have a bet on that one, too.
Actually, last Friday we had her on.
10 points, that was.
She shockingly, I think it was shocking.
I told you 10 points last year.
But she won by 8 points. Anna Paulina Luna, that's a carved-up gerrymandered district, formerly Charlie Crist's district. So Whitney Fox, a moderate Democrat, was running.
I would disagree with that.
Hold on here. Very easy now. All right. So we were. The point was that she was appealing to. She had to appeal to Republicans, right? Not only and independents. So the idea being, if I can bring all my Democrats with me, I can bring some Republicans with me, and I can bring a lot of the independents with me, I may have a fighting chance. Now, I thought it was really very hard for her to do that.
But she did it effectively.
She did not.
lost by 10 points.
No, I'm not saying it worked.
Right.
I'm saying it takes something else. It takes like a Bernie Sanders style disruption, like David Brooks argued this morning, for them to figure out which way they want to go. I don't think it's toward the center.
Oh, interesting.
The
point where you're talking about here is that at least in this case of CD13, the independents did not save Whitney Fox. The independents did not save the Democrats at all. When they look at 29% of the electorate is independent. NPA, it's 26%. And 3%.
Only going up.
Right. It's a lot of people don't, but younger people. Bree, you are a Democrat. Can we get the microphone to Bree for a second? But are you a hesitant Democrat? I mean, if there was other parties available that were, we had more than 2 parties.
Open primary, maybe?
Yeah, no, I definitely don't exclusively call myself a Democrat. I mean, I'm part of the socialist groups. I am very progressive, and Democrats are not progressive anymore. They always want to play to Republicans, and then you're going to lose Democrats. We don't want to vote for you if you're not really for us. We're going to go for third parties if we can, or we're just not going to vote for you. That's why Kamala probably lost a lot of people too.
So Barry, back to this NPA discussion. So you have told me in the past that
I wrote op-eds on it.
A lot of people think that NPAs are centrist voters, that they're not really left or right, they're more in the middle. But you say that's not correct.
We have hundreds of thousands, millions of interviews done by the University of Michigan and Stanford, both legitimate universities. And there's 3 types of independents. There's what we call a Republican leaner. A Republican leaner, which is why the independents in Florida now, we think, vote about 60-40 for the Republicans. In the Corey Simon district, they voted 70-30.
In Tallahassee.
In Tallahassee. So if you're a Republican leaner, you're a more reliable Republican voter than a non-primary voting Republican. And you registered independent because you think the Republican Party is a bunch of loser liberals and not conservative enough. And there used to be about a third, and a third for these 3 groups. Now it's about 45 to 50% of independents in Florida only vote for, because the people that moved here the last 4 years only vote Republican. So Republicans are starting out with half the independent vote from day one. The second group are Democratic leaners that think Barack Obama is a conservative fascist and the Democratic Party is a bunch of loser conservatives.
They don't want to be Democratic.
And those people and this was validated by the Bernie Sanders races and the Trump races. When Bernie Sanders had an open open primary with independents could vote, he did much better. When it was a closed primary, he did worse. So the independents are more liberal on the Democratic leaner side. They used to be about a third. Now they're about 30%. And then the middle group are the true swing voter independents. In Florida, they're less than 20%, we think, now.
Okay, so 20% of those of eligible voters that you can maybe persuade to your side, you're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
So people going after
in the
independents,
center.
right, that are truly in the center, only about 1/5 of the independents.
And I don't want to get too off track of where I think Mitch is going, but we're talking. You've got a lot of facts here, right? So when you look at the leadership for the Democratic Party, where does it go from here in Florida? Is there anybody out there who can do something?
Okay, so, and we know,
effectively?
and I love my colleague here, I just met, is very nice, and I like her passion. But we have actually data on what sells and what doesn't sell. We have the Andrew Gillum race where he ran as a liberal, left of center. We had the black woman who ran as the conservative for agriculture commissioner. You had Jeremy Ring for CFO, and you had Sean Shaw for attorney general. So Sean ran as
in 2018
as the most progressive. Okay,
and
so
Andrew didn't spend all his money. Let's talk about that.
well,
Neither did Bill Nelson.
okay, so the most conservative candidate in that race had no Democratic establishment support, got the highest vote. The black woman running for ag commissioner. The second highest vote was Jeremy Ring, who ran as a conservative CFO, and then Andrew Gillum. So Andrew Gillum and Sean Shaw are both African American.
Right.
Gillum got 880,000 votes more than Sean Shaw because Sean Shaw ran as a progressive. So I think in Florida we can tell you the more liberal you are, the worse you are going to do electorally.
Well, people thought that when Gillum beat out Gwen Graham and also Phil Levine, the mayor of Miami Beach, both of those I talked to afterwards, they were convinced that they had won the primary, that they would have beat Ron DeSantis. We'll never know. By the way, I wanted something that we have.
It would have been a totally different dynamic.
You're right. Listener writes in and says, legacy media openly said that conservatives and white men were racist, especially if they had an American flag in their yard. If we had it, let's see, I'm trying to read this. If we had to take it down, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to read this puppy here. Moving this over here, folks. I'm sorry, this is not good radio. Hold on. Okay. They said if conservatives and white men were racist, especially if they had an American flag in their yard. We had to take down our flag out of fear of the yard signs being stolen, and cars got keyed. YouTube, Facebook still monitor and censor speech. Politely write into YouTube, watch 2,000 miles. Okay, you will be banned for 2 weeks in your company. So this listener says that he's a conservative and he thinks that the legacy media is against him here. Now here's another person who writes, why would you say you are socialist? This is not a socialist country, and if someone wants that, there are other countries available. Okay, it sounds like we're in South Florida here now. Okay. By the way, we have Chris on the line here. By the way, we really want, folks, if you want to call in right now, maybe you're objecting to something you're hearing here, 813-239-9663. You're listening to Skinny here on WMNF. Hi, we've got Chris on the line from Clearwater. Chris?
I lost my...
I think that what got Trump elected is, for a lot of folks, is the promise of RFK Jr. to reverse the trend of a decreasingly healthy country by promoting health. So we won't be divided and work together by having the necessary physical and mental health, the mental focus, the memory to have the time for patient conversation by also raising our standards of living. And what we got is, I don't know if it's the lesser or the greater of two Zionists, but, even if Israel were to cease to exist, as many wish would happen, the bankster gangsters at the privately owned Federal Reserve would continue to parasitize our economy.
Okay, do you have a
economic power?
Can you boil it down for us, Chris? Where are you coming from here?
Still, regardless of who's selected, we still need to seek solutions that don't depend on politicians like community currency, barter networks, time banks, cooperatives, and swap shops. Now, it's clear that Trump and Harris were both blackmailable through the Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell pedophile network.
Okay, all right, thank you. Conspiracy mind. Thank you, Chris, for the call. Again, 813-239-9663.
Barry, I have a question about that. Those kinds of viewpoints and conspiracies and things like this, and echo chambers did play a lot into this election. What is your research play there? And how does can quote unquote legacy media and newspapers break through that? I mean,
well, I used to be on the Poynter board, and I hope it does. But for these types of these fringe
left of it?
And these fringe groups and I don't say that in a pejorative, but I guess it is a pejorative, that get online. And my brother's on the Council of Foreign Relations, and I was at an event and I was told that he was really a lizard. They had captured my brother and then he made him a lizard. This stuff is just nonsense.
Can we bring up the Tampa Bay Times and lack of recommendation for the president and the U.S. Senate? because Ray, I wanted to bring this up. I brought this up very last
It was a great
week.
idea for them not to do that.
Really, you believe so? But
Because
the timing, Barry, was very questionable.
Well, they had made the decision before. They didn't reveal it. But
Right.
here's why it was important.
Yeah.
They wanted to have impact on school board races, on judicial races. If they had had a bell-ringing endorsement for Kamala Harris, then people would have looked at it and they would have shredded it even more. So then you would have even lost more impact.
Right, because again,
Especially remember, their service area voted heavily. Both counties voted for Trump.
yes, the Hillsborough
So they would have,
flipped.
and then they would have endorsed Deborah Muscarella-Paul. They didn't endorse in the Senate race either.
No.
And those races. So you got two losers at the top where your people said, "Oh, you're wrong," and then they wouldn't have followed through on the lower ones.
They would have lacked. We already think the Times is already losing influence daily.
Yeah, I mean, you
basically.
said that people were bringing the Times recommendations in there to explicitly vote against them.
on the amendments.
But
Yeah.
the timing was horrible here after the Washington Post and LA Times came out with pressure from the ownership. In this case of the Times, owned by the Poynter Institute, they famously always said we're insulated from getting pressure. So in this case, maybe this is Ben, I'd love to hear you weigh in, the former Times.
I think it was self-pressure, but it was smart pressure because it made their endorsements impactful as much as they could be.
What do you think, Ben?
What if I'd like to entertain this notion that the press, by and large, for 4 years or so, has sort of been compiled enough evidence to stake the claim that Donald Trump is the bad candidate, even in news coverage, right? Every introduction of him is followed by his bona fides, which now include criminal counts. I think, what about the notion that half of us just got sick of hearing the media tell us what to do in this election?
I think that I think you can absolutely say that Barack Obama and Michelle Obama had a consequential impact on black males voting for Donald Trump. And I saw this in over 1,000 surveys done in Pennsylvania. They were tired of being lectured to by black elites on that if you don't vote, you're not a brother. If you don't vote, you're a misogynist. All these things. They said, well, screw you. We're not dumb. And now we got a black man telling us and a black woman who live in a $10 million house that we're not black. Screw him. So Barack
but I think that's the point.
Forget about Obama for a second, though. What Ben's point about is the media overall, the messaging. Because I always say that even if Trump had lost, the media couldn't quit Trump. That's what you see when you watch MSNBC. You hear more about Trump than you do about Kamala Harris.
Well, the MSNBC has just got saved because their ratings will go up 2-3 million a day.
Exactly.
Yeah, but what if
Fox
it's not
is going to plummet now?
This presidency is actually good for the media, I think.
Yeah, but what if it's not about having influence? When you make a decision to say, "Oh, I'm putting these endorsements out so I can have an impact." What if you're just talking about your own institutional values of the paper, right? If we already know that people aren't reading "quote unquote" legacy media or voting against it, then is the point of the endorsement to say these are the values and virtues of our publication?
Well, I mean that's an argument, but I always go to you can't govern if you don't win, and if you want. Amendment 4, Amendment 3. Joe Gruder's one of my old clients. Is for Amendment 3.
Yeah.
And so if you want to impact that on, you gotta. You don't always have to be right to win.
But do you think the Times wants to be right on stuff or have an impact?
They definitely want to have an impact.
And they're worried about readers losing readers.
Because if you don't have anybody buying your paper,
right?
You don't have any.
By the way,
whatsoever.
we've got Bubba writing and saying, how long before the orange shirts, which he puts the Trump equivalent of Hitler's brown shirts, are recruited? Okay.
Well, I got to say, I think that we ought to all take a deep breath. America, unlike any European democracy, and I have people, and Mitch will tell, I want to say that important in my life, wanted to flee to Europe and didn't eat for 2 days because of this. And I said, look, America's not like a European democracy where you go from an ultra-liberal to an ultra-conservative. First of all, we have a federated system. We have 50 states and our territories. So you have divided power there that's in the Constitution that even conservative Supreme Court justices, they're probably going to be more likely to uphold states' rights. And then within the states, you have your counties and cities. But at the federal level, you have a judiciary that has put some checks on Trump. People could argue about the immunity, but that wasn't as broad as I think people think it is. But you have that, and you have the checks of the divided of a Senate and a House. The Republicans said they're keeping the filibuster. That means the Democrats can stop over-the-top things.
Even if they get 55 votes, they don't have 60 votes.
Right, they don't have 60.
Yeah.
And in the House, you only need 4 or 5 Republicans to bolt.
And right now, we're waiting for this at the House, right, for that to be counted. And I was understanding, I was reading Punchbowl News this morning, that it may be at best maybe 2 or 3, kind of like they have right now.
Right, I think that
for Mike Johnson, House Speaker Mike Johnson, that's a big headache for him because he doesn't have enough of a coalition, really.
And I think that you saw... And this is maybe hopeful on my part, but my friends that are close to Trump, and you know who they are, said that he wants to make a legacy now. He just got shot. Hopefully that had some impact on his life, and maybe not enough as we may have wanted. But by choosing Susie Wiles, he chose an establishment Reagan-Bush Republican against the MAGA's wishes. So he put somebody who's going to bring order. He doesn't want chaos anymore. He has 4 years and he's out. He's going to start to try to establish legacies. And I think that that's a moderating position when remember, he likes to read about himself and he likes to see.
Susie Wiles, the first ever woman chief of staff.
Woman chief of staff. And she is the most talented. And she said her favorite Republicans in Florida were Joe Gruters. Her least favorite was Ron DeSantis. I think that
are we going to see
Ron DeSantis' career is now done.
Are we going to see Florida Republicans in powerful national positions pretty soon?
And what happens with any special elections if Marco Rubio goes?
Who leaves Florida?
Okay, so if Marco Rubio goes, there is no special election.
No.
There would be an appointee by the governor to fill out 2 years, and then you'd have the election.
Okay, 2 years. Right, because he's got 4 years left.
Right, so you'd have 2 years as he'd be. Whoever it would be the incumbent for 2 years. DeSantis had said he would not appoint himself yesterday.
Okay, so that'll be an interesting, fascinating point to see.
But that could always change because now he knows he's not going to be attorney general. People that are on the transition team that locally, Pam Bondi is on the presidential transition team, very influential. Joe Gruters is on the transition team, very influential.
Will Joe Gruters get a job in the administration?
I would think that he if you read the endorsement that Trump did to him for CFO, he can either walk in probably unopposed for CFO because the Democrat is irrelevant in the state right now. Or he could probably, get a cabinet post, and because he was MAGA before there was MAGA. He in 2012 did the Trump event in Sarasota.
They did him twice Sarasota Man of the Year, Joe Trump. By the way, if you're just tuning in right now, it's 11:52. You're listening to Skinny here on WMNF. I'm Mitch Perry with Ben Montgomery, Ray Rowe.
And there's some congressmen in Florida that are thinking he's getting.
Can I ask Barry a personal question?
Oh, well, maybe.
Barry, you talked to Bree about how she's doing. What do the next few years look like for you, and how much has your job changed? But
Barry goes both ways in terms of Democrat and Republican, so you'll be fine, right?
No, but I mean the way that you view the data that you collect. Like, how much has it changed, and how much has your mind been blown by what's happened?
It's changed a lot. My parents were World War II. Were a great generation, and so my values as the youngest of all the kids really was framed by that. And they had trouble in 2016 voting for Trump, but now everybody has just got past that whole civility. And I used to do a lot of radio, and I never swore on it. I never said things that were too over the top because I didn't want my mother or father to be embarrassed or offended. Now there seems to be there's no embarrassment level that we have anymore. I mean, we just say crazy stuff. We don't back it up. I meet a lot of influencers. They just make stuff up or plagiarize all the time. So that's one of the things that people are misinformed. I mean, there's some things that are fact. Pat Moynihan said everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own set of facts. And that when Trump says that that tariffs are not taxes on us, that's factually incorrect. We're the one who pays it. China doesn't pay it.
Let's bring up DeSantis for the last 5 minutes of the program here, because that's what we're dealing with. Ron DeSantis, Florida. That's our existence right now, and he's got 2 long years left here.
And he just got boosted by big wins in these 2 constitutional amendments.
Even though he'll feel good about the fact that a majority of people voted for cannabis and voted for abortion rights, he can boast that he won. You're correct on that. So that's going to be a boost. We're going to have the session coming up in a few months. We're going to see about that. He wants to have a special session, I believe, on condo reform, right? Because of the situation with these fees now that are hitting these condos because of the Surfside legislation. And the legislature initially said, no, we don't think we need a special session. And now we'll see what happens when they meet in a couple of weeks. We're going to hear, we only have less than 2 months before supposedly some of these condo owners are going to be really feeling it in terms of big assessments.
So Ron DeSantis, anybody who said write him off and not powerful in Florida, he just reemerged.
Yeah.
And remember, Trump endorsed the marijuana amendment.
Yes.
And it still lost.
It lost. Right. And that's so Ron got over Don on that one.
So Grutter, now even though 55%, he did have a majority. I like that Ron over Don, but he is still the significant player day to day in Florida. But Trump as the sitting president will singularly
he can no longer sue the government. Him and Pam Bondi, Ashley Moody have been making a field day of filing lawsuits about immigration and about student debt and all these different things that he can no longer do.
So we know that if whoever Trump picks for the Republican nomination in Florida for governor will be the nominee and will win. We know that right now it's CFO is Gruters.
Matt Gaetz, perhaps.
If Wilton doesn't run for governor, he'll be ag commissioner. If not, Ben Albritton will be the ag commissioner. So the question is, who does Trump want for for attorney general and governor? And that's
so we're talking. It's not only a Ron DeSantis Florida; it's a Donald Trump Florida.
He totally
Yippee-yi-yi.
controls. If you have to make a choice, you pick Donald Trump.
So, do you believe that people who say, I see this on social media, Ray in here, you guys, about people who say they're going to move out of Florida now?
No.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we heard this of George W. Bush.
But on this show, your guy got up and left the last time I was on, and the census data proves that's wrong.
But I mean, is this like basically like showing that I'm better than this? I mean, the mentality of this, I get it on a fleet basis. Like, I can't deal with this now. But most people are not going to actually.
I think people would sooner move out of Florida because it's so expensive. Right, before any of that. And let's face it, that is people just venting. And you sit here across from Bree, who's 27 years old and remains resolute and committed to the cause that she has. I think you don't need to look any further than somebody like Bree
get on
to see what that's...
So yeah, I mean, look, we're talking about this landscape, and as you're feeling it happening with Amendment 4 and what you're doing, what do you think about the state? Do you think it can come back in terms of what you grew up like the state even being right now in terms of the politics?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to take a very long time. I think we went extremely conservative. And would I love to move out of the state? Yeah, I'm not going to because there's people here that need us. But I think it's banding more together now and, working together for this. And I don't think, progressive people are going to move here, though. So I think, we're not going to have the government, but we'll have each other and we'll continue to do, mutual aid and organize and take care of one another even when the government isn't. So
well, you saw in Georgia, right, over the last 5-6 years, whatever, how it's become certainly a purple state.
Right, it moved back toward the Republican the last two cycles.
It did.
Kemp had a big victory over Stacey Abrams, and Trump had a big victory yesterday, 2 days ago.
Right, and we'll see when the Senate comes up again. But again, that was the action was at this year. If you were covering politics in Florida, there was Hillary Clinton. I guess Kamala did not want Hillary around because Hillary came to Tampa, of all places, last Saturday to campaign at the very last
She was already
minute.
coming.
Right.
Yes. Right.
And her husband was in Orlando.
Bill Clinton was in Orlando the very last weekend. It was kind of weird. I mean, we didn't get any high-profile surrogates whatsoever because why would they? This is a state that ultimately was a 13-point state.
But I'd love to be invited by Ray to write an op-ed in his
Dude,
paper.
I was talking with Colin the other day. We don't have those voices that are, we need more of that.
But Florida has always been a conservative state. If you look back at the three paragons...
A moderate state.
Well, no, a conservative state. Ruben Askew lost his bid for the presidency because he thought that gay marriage should be outlawed, and he was 100% pro-life. So that's your greatest governor of Florida's history.
Wait a minute. There was not even discussion of gay rights back when he was really...
He ran against, and that was one of the things he ran against, abortion rights and gay rights. There was discussion. Ruben Askew, and that's why he lost in Iowa.
I'll save you one page in the next week's book.
Bob Graham, though.
Bob Graham gave out little chairs that were old Sparky that you put your finger in and it would spark you. He was a conservative except on the environment. And then you had Lawton Childs, who in 18 years in the U.S. Senate never voted for a pro-choice bill. He was anti-abortion until he became governor, and the FEA hated him. The teachers' unions hated him. So you had your three greatest Democratic leaders of the modern era, and they were all conservatives. So we are just more conservative now and Republican conservative.
I think we like to think of Florida as a more moderate place than what it really is.
We do, but I think it's now you can see that it's not.
But its whole history is,
And for the marijuana and the abortion, it wasn't fueled by why they got the numbers by Republican women, as you saw like in Florida this week. Last week, the Republican next to me said she's voting for Trump and against the amendment. It was Republican males under 40 who don't want to be held accountable for being irresponsible.
That's who we're supporting Amendment 4, right. Men.
And then they voted straight Republican tickets.
Like freaking out.
Then they voted straight Republican tickets. It's true, though, right?
Yeah, no, it is. It's very true. People are scared. And you know what? Women are going to be careful, and women are not going to want to be with men as much right now. Why would they be? You could literally die. There are pregnant people dying. Why would you want to be? People don't even want to get pregnant right now. Literally, even if you wanted to have a child, why would you do it in Florida? Why would you do it in America at this moment?
Bree, thank you so much.
Bree
for joining
Wallace, Director of Case
Awesome to
Management at
watch.
Tampa Bay Abortion Fund. Barry Edwards, political
mad scientist.
divorce, and you owe me a column before Monday, 800 words.
I can't get
op-ed.
900 words?
No, I'll give you 900. On behalf of myself, Mitch Perry, Ben Montgomery, Skip Sassy on the boards, Irene Matthews, thank you so much on the phones. I think I see Joe Ellen in Studio One with Art in Your Ear. You've been listening to WMNF Tampa. We'll slowly pry ourselves away from the national election next week, but I don't think we quite know what we're talking about. But we can't wait to be back with you. We hope you have a very safe and somewhat peaceful weekend.
Holly.